Do not have a deficit in your adductors. This is toolbox number 2 for adduction strength. In my last post, we went over toolbox number 1, which was all based on Copenhagen adduction exercises. In this toolbox, we're going to discuss Kinstretch adduction liftoffs. These will be way easier for you if you have an irritable shoulder that you can't push through. If your core or trunk strength is not strong enough to handle a Copenhagen, and also if you're one of those people who has trouble turning off their neck, which is extremely common when you have weak adductors. Let's start off with the basic Kinstretch adduction liftoff. These are fabulous. Let's prepare. Number 1, stack up your ribcage and pelvis. Number 2, you want to find your lower side abdominals. Your abdominals and your adductors are a team. Do that by creating a mouse hole. Number 3, drive that top leg down into the block, which will help you find more abdominals. Then let's go see where your leg is at. Almost everybody is going to have to bring that knee behind them in line with their hip. Hold on to all of that and lift off. We typically do a 10-second hold. Pro tip, if you want more abdominals, try driving that top arm down into the ground. Then give me a few more millimeters of lift off. Another pro tip, this is not supposed to be a cervical event. Relax your neck. If you have weak adductors, your neck is probably going to try to help. Option 2, adding hinges to our liftoffs. Once you've figured out the basics of the adduction liftoff, I highly recommend everyone give these a try. The challenge with these is not letting that knee come forwards. You want to keep it in line with your hip. You want to keep it high. And then you need to turn on your glute, squeeze your glute with your core and hinge your knee, trying to pull the heel back to your hip. And just remember to keep taking inventory. Do you still have your core? Your ribcage and pelvis is stacked? Do you have that mouse hole turning on those lower side abdominals to work with your adductors? Are you still crushing the block? And can you keep your neck and head relaxed? Option 3 is to add hip internal rotation to your adduction liftoff. The trick with this is that the movement has to come from the hip, not from your foot or your toes. Make it come from the hip. You can either do an isometric hold here or try to keep that internal rotation as you add hinges. Option 4 is hands down my favorite variation. Here we change up the position of the top leg and introduce hip external rotation. This is glute max, the superior fibers. Your adductors and that opposite glute max are a team. So let me talk you through this. You are going to position that top hip into external rotation. That bottom leg, you're going to do a lift off and position it into internal rotation and then fine tune it. See if you can lift that top knee up a little further. And the whole point of that is to turn your pelvis towards the floor. Think of your belly button turning towards the floor. The adductors pull the belly button towards the floor. The glute max pushes the belly button towards the floor. This is walking. Your adductors pulling you, your glute max pushing you. And then if you want to have a little more fun, go find that glute on the bottom side and introduce your knee hinges. Option number 5 is fabulous for cinching up the front, finding that tension, that connection through the front that so many of us get disconnected in. It's also great because we introduce hip flexion on that bottom leg. So set up with your bottom leg at 90 degrees. Turn your pelvis towards the floor. Stack up your ribcage, find those abdominals on the bottom side, then place your hand on a roller and crush it to get more abdominal tension. When you're ready to go, lift off. You can either hold this position and just breathe or try to introduce rotation, but don't lose that connection in the front. A weak core will escape into extension and you'll lose that back body expansion. This tension in the front is what allows you to get expansion in the back. Okay, so between toolbox number 1, all of the Copenhagen options, and toolbox number 2, all of your Kinstretch adduction liftoff options, you have a variety of techniques to pick from. Now, we need to integrate this adduction strength into the global pattern, integrated into costal, ribcage, and pelvis dynamics. This is all about moving your center of mass, lateralizing, getting off of one leg onto another. Efficient movement. Your adductors work as a team with your abdominals. They also work as a team with your opposite glute max. We hinted at this with a few of our last techniques, but coming up, let's get serious about teaching these muscles how to work together.